Basically, AWS talks about cloud, and we know a lot of us are being asked to move to the cloud. Again, in terms of just agility, but also accessibility, to the extent of how does this work for startups and SMEs?
Okay, thank you, Phil. Let me take 10 seconds to make light of this. I was actually wondering, it's our second connected, and I understand why it takes a while to call us on stage. But we are not going anywhere in a hurry. Really excited as AWS to be here, and it's our second connected, and really excited to see a lot of our partners, customers, and everyone else. From a cloud perspective, let me address this in two ways. I don't need to really define cloud computing. I think that's pretty common knowledge now. I'd like to answer this in two parts. Number one, I'd like to just share the extent. As we talk about inclusivity, it would also be good to get a good sense of the impact and weight of what cloud computing brings to the table. Just a year ago, we were happy to partner with the government of Ukraine. We all know what happened there. But it's interesting that when you think about a country, every time we think about data, we think about the security of the data, either within the borders or because it's somewhere else in someone else's data center. But it was interesting that when we then partnered with the government of Ukraine, we were thinking about the government prioritized a number of records, top 4 being citizen record, land registry, banking records, and then election records. Of course, because there are people trying to come in and mess a lot of that. And within a window of 5 weeks, the government of Ukraine, even with internal and external forces coming in to threaten the security of the country, were up and running, even with absolute threats within its own borders. That number one gives you the enterprise grade strength that cloud computing brings to the table. But then coming back to the question of startups, when we think about startups as AWS, since our launch in 2006, startups have been very, very close to us. Why? Because whether it's a one-man startup, two-man, we see ourselves as natural enablers to the journey of that startup. Why do we? And that's why you find that we remain very close to startups, because we want to move at the speed at which they innovate and intend to grow. And therefore, when we invest in a startup, and I'll be talking about the investment shortly, we see their success as our success. We invest in startups in two ways. Number one is what we call AWS Activate credits, which range from $1,000 to $100,000. And we've seen all kinds of startups just benefit from this. The second is services that enable them to grow. And therefore, some of the startups that started small with us, but then later grew, is common names like Airbnb, Stripe, Twilio, Netflix also started as a startup with us, and then more in our continent, companies like Cellulant, Flutterwave, all these are startups that started really small with us. What's the benefit of starting small? And coming back to the inclusivity question, is because they only would pay for exactly what they need, and then we grow, and as elastic as they grow, then, and if they then experience any dip, we then would move with them. So this is the benefit that we bring from an inclusivity perspective.
Thank you so much. So you're not too small and you're not too big. Technology is an enabler, but also is an equalizer, from what I'm hearing. And so it means you can actually start today. So find him somewhere for lunch if you're not booked. Let me go to Ezra. We've heard from industry, from Safaricom to the global players who have regional roots to the international players, and across the spectrum, whether it's security, devices, issues about democratizing the internet in terms of simply just creative, inclusive access, in terms of the investments that have been made to make technology more accessible right now at a great cost, from what I understand, to security in terms of how we operate safely on the internet. Government, especially your shop, has universal services access. And so how are you also sort of enabling this ecosystem in terms of accessibility for connectivity?
Okay. Thank you very much, Philip, and fellow panelists and participants. Good afternoon. I think it's the wrong time to be having a panel discussion. It's no longer a panel discussion, it's actually, they call it manels. I hope the ladies here will be. All right. I think it's important to appreciate the fact that as a country, we've really made a major progress in as far as this industry is concerned. And listening to our sister here talking about the trajectory Kenya has gone through and some of the lessons now compressed into what they're calling the digital transformation drivers. That basically tells a story of what we, especially as a regulator, have been doing for the last 20 plus years. And when we talk about inclusion, you got to look at it from two perspectives from our end. One is the regulatory environment that we are responsible for. And the other one is really dealing with the most difficult issues, especially people who don't have the ample privilege to be able to access ICT services through our intervention around the universal access issues. So on the regulatory side, I think all these private actors on this platform are here because of the enabling regulatory environment we've had over time. The growth of Safaricom, the coming on board of the undersea cables, the type of devices that we find in the market is all because of the work that we do. And the idea here is to make sure that each and every citizen has choice of what is available to the market. And really, if you look at broadband based on the work that the industry has done, today mobile broadband in terms of penetration, population-wise, we are at 98%. Although our reports up to last year, at some point they'll talk about 96.6, but based on some further review, we are at 80%. That is a lot. Like above average, we can be equated to other developed countries in terms of penetration. But of course, we still have challenges there. We talk about devices. So far, if you look at connectivity on the internet, we will say that we have up to 60% of the devices being smart, or smart phones at 60%. Now, we got a 40% gap that we have to deal with. Most of it supported by the feature, communication supported by the feature phones and stuff like that. But we think that we need to do more to ensure that each and every citizen is actually given that opportunity to enjoy the benefits arising from digital transformation. And the regulatory intervention, really, while it has been useful, we need to do much more from where we see it. Now, the other bit I just wanted to also share with the rest is that if you look at our licensing framework, especially those in the telco sector, we have the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Now, we've introduced a fourth layer, which we call the community networks. A lot of you who are familiar here with the different regimes of licensing. The community network is basically trying as much as possible to enable individuals, regardless of where they are, to organize themselves, to come together and put in seed capital to be able to avail connectivity to their members or their spaces. Something that is kind of novel. And the success of it will depend on organizing. And I'm happy I'm here with the Mheshimiwa. You got your constituent out there. Organizing those young people, giving them seed capital to be able to avail connectivity in the form of internet among themselves, I think is one area that we've seen is going to add a lot of value. Now, just the last bit on the universal access. We all understand that the market is not perfect. What happens where there's market failure? We have government intervention. And the principle of the universal access has led to the establishment of the Universal Service Fund, which is managed by the Communication Authority of Kenya. And the law gives us the power to be able to invest the money in a way that ensures that each and every citizen is actually connected. So where the market has failed, we invest to ensure that individuals or citizens who are largely unserved or underserved also have an equal opportunity. For the last 5 years, what we've done is that we started the project of connecting about 276 sub-locations to give them an opportunity to be on the communication grid. As we speak now, by the end of this year, we will have connected up to 136 of those sub-locations, which is really progress. The next bit is that we are also working with government, especially when it comes to infrastructure, looking at basic services, e-education, e-health, e-agriculture, and e-justice. Those are projects that we think are key, especially when you're trying to make technology relevant to ordinary citizens. So what we've done is that we have actually provided financing to be able, as a seed financing, to be able to have those institutions extend their coverage when it comes to service delivery. So in terms of inclusivity, we do not just look at what is happening in the mainstream, at the mainstream market, but we have to think about those people who are outside the grid of connectivity. And we've done a lot more when it comes to Universal Service Fund. So lastly, I think there's issue to do with the content. Meaningful connectivity is that people connect because they want to create value or to find value. And the challenge for us is, what is it that the industry is going to do to ensure that citizens actually find something meaningful when they are connected? And the agenda of digitization of government services, we think, is a first point of call. And we're expecting to see a lot more capacity in terms of usage of resources. In the next few, I'll just say in the next 12 months, given that we're already doing 5,000, so when we add a bit more like the 3,000 services, we should see a lot more activity on the online space when it comes to government services. So there's a lot we can do, we've done, and there's a lot more we can do even in the near future, given the government agenda of digital transformation.
Thank you so much, DG, and for actually broadening the access issue around even licenses, right? So how do you lower the barrier of access to connectivity that then communities can also connect or hyperlocally? Mheshimiwa, I was leaving you last for I think the reason why I thought it would be quite interesting, because you have dual roles, a role as the chair for the ICT committee, but also as a member of parliament. And I thought, to this extent, this was a very much 10,000 feet. It would be interesting to understand the bottom of these conversations. My two questions relating to your roles. One is, as the chair of the ICT committee, you've had, it's accelerating. We need agility. We know that laws always either catch up or stifle innovation. We've had from Cisco, its partnerships. So to what extent are you thinking about agile governance? And I know you and I have been talking about this, of how do we legislate differently in the era of technological acceleration? That's my first point. The second point is, if you can give us that example that I know you're doing in your constituency that is leveraging on connectivity to transform lives. Those two.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Philip. And I've also got to say a big thank you to the organizers and the participants. Clearly, there is need for what we are doing here today, being half of 2 o'clock. We haven't had lunch, and the hall is still full. That should tell you that we are in the right place, doing the right business at the right time. Now, to connect it to the conversation of agility, it probably would be important to first ask ourselves, what is Parliament doing in such a place, the Connected Summit? We all have to remember what Parliament has been given as a role or roles by the Constitution to do in this country. And the big ones are, of course, Parliament makes laws. So when we talk about agility in venturing into these new frontiers in the digital space, there will also be the other side of it, which shall be driven by governance. And this is not just corporate governance, is what policies are being churned out, what legislation is being put out there, what are the regulations and the regulations frameworks looking like. So in that sense, Parliament becomes a critical stakeholder in this journey. Secondly, we've got to remember that Parliament actually develops budgets. Now, there is so much that has been said here just on the first day of this conference. And each of these things needs to be financed. Even as much as we are calling out for private sector to partner with us, private sector to put in some money, in every single one of the projects that we are seeing, especially the big projects, government is being required to put in some seed capital. So Parliament comes in here to ensure that what is being proclaimed right from the top, because the biggest champion for this drive is actually none other than His Excellency the President. Now, it is for Parliament to ensure that government is also putting money where their mouth is, so that we don't just enumerate what needs to be done, we just don't enumerate the visions, but we also fund these visions. Thirdly, most importantly, government does oversight, Parliament does oversight. Now, we have a very strange relationship with organizations like Communications Authority, because one time Parliament is CA's boss, but at the same time, Parliament is also depending on CA on a number of things, including technical know-how, value addition in terms of skills and understanding sector, and so on. Now, on the oversight role, when the Digital Impact Alliance was making a presentation here, you can see how high they were putting the issue of governance, because we will have to also have checks, and these checks go beyond the physical brick and mortar checks that we talk about in terms of oversighting. They are now coming up very serious issues that are soft issues to do with what codes will inform the philosophy, what ethics will inform the philosophy going forward, what models of social structures shall be borrowed from our cultures and put into new practices in the new digital space. So oversight is a broad space that brings in Parliament into this discussion. Now, to your question on agility. Now, you can imagine, traditionally, it has been very hard for legislation to catch up with technology. Now, you can imagine how much harder it becomes with the pace at which technology is moving. But now, even for a place like Kenya, the new drive, especially what government is pushing for, and it is being pushed. We had the narrative by George here in the morning that the head of state declares that by end of year we shall have Hustler Fund. And a month to the deadline, it is pushed back by a month, meaning that there is so much that needs to get done in such a short time. Now, what we have been thinking as the Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation is to rethink how legislation around this space is done. So much so that legislation will be about overarching principles in the space, not over-legislating to the minute detail, because by over-legislating to the minute detail, we are also slowing down the progress. We are also over-policing the sector. We are stifling innovation by over-legislating. But some of the learnings we're getting from places like jurisdictions like Estonia is that you can have overarching codes that inform the entire space without going into the very specific detail, so that laws in this space can reflect laws in other spaces. For example, Philip, when you take up the penal code, if someone is a thief, there is no law for someone who stole in a matatu. That is different from someone who stole when they were in a hotel, or different from someone who stole by breaking into their house. The penal code speaks about the theft and the act of stealing and the offender and the penalties. So in such a way, then we can have laws that are overarching, that allow for maneuver space by players in sector, including government, and that is the philosophy that this committee is toying about with, and I'd like to, at this juncture, also recognize that I've got a member of the Communication and Innovation Committee who has joined us for this discussion. She left from Kisii this morning just to show how important this function is for our committee. The Honorable Irene Mayaka is in the house, and we were talking about ladies. Our committee shall also be presented and represented in the discussion on women in tech. So we shall have the Honorable Jematia Sergon joining the conversation. The final thing I'd like to say before I talk about initiatives that we're putting up in the constituency is agility means also not being stuck in a past. We are running a danger as Kenya of over-romanticizing the past. And the example I'll use is just a generic example, not for any specific reason, to make the point. M-Pesa is an innovation of 2007. Since 2007, we have had 1,000,001 Connect summits and many other summits out there. We as Kenya have to now prove to the world that M-Pesa was not a fluke. So it cannot be M-Pesa. Every other year we come back here, we talk about how big we are in the world because we did M-Pesa. Maybe when M-Pesa comes up, we will now have to probably have another discussion on M-Pesa, not on its success. Maybe we will have to now cut this cadaver of a body called M-Pesa and find out what is inside there in terms of the model that was utilized in arriving at M-Pesa, and see if it is a critical path that can be followed in future innovations, so that we have a bit much more to showcase in 2023 beyond M-Pesa. And that speaks to the sandboxes that are being set up. So if Connected Summit 2023 is a sandbox for texting ideas, then we need to analyze what has been working, how we ended up with M-Pesa happening. In the same discussion, when we talk about agility and juxtapose it with a conversation that was brought by the Prime CS in the morning, there is also a very big risk we run in also trying to be what the Prime CS was describing as people who are obsessed with power and control. Because even our clinging to power and control is also stifling innovation. There are mamas that are coming to Parliament, mamas that, because Parliament is representing the people of Kenya, we are being told that big tech are becoming perennial idea and innovation bandits. Having the economic power that they have, they are being accused by Kenyans of stifling innovation by taking up brilliant ideas from young Kenyans, utilizing them, commercializing them, exploiting them, and not giving the rightful share to the original innovators. So even as we are talking about agility, we will also have to break up other walls within the space. The conversation on dominance is a conversation that comes into this agility conversation we are having, juxtaposing it with the conversation on power and control. We were told of the benefits of breaking up a massive enterprise called Kenya Post and Telecommunication Corporation. And when it was split into the many entities that it gave birth to, we saw how innovation was spurred. In less than a decade, Kenya had leapfrogged to the front of the innovation pile. So even as we build enterprises, let us also think about how we self-regulate to actualize the dream of giving birth to many other innovative centers, so that innovation is not domiciled at one center while government is trying to devolve everything to the smallest unit, so that it gives us an idea to start thinking about if success is working out by going the way of fragmenting, how will fragmenting as an idea spur more innovation going forward? I'm so sorry, Philip, for taking such a long time, but I needed to make that point to show how Parliament comes into this discussion. Thank you very much.
So much, Mheshimiwa.
And given the opportunity, we'll talk about innovation in the Dagoretti
Please,
constituency
yeah.
much later.
And find him for lunch because he's doing something very innovative. Real example on connectivity and food and feeding
Oh,
kids.
brilliant.
Yeah, so-
And allow me, and this is not a paid advert, let me recognize that in the house we've got Cisco. Give them a round of applause because you don't know what I'm just about to say. Now, the Dagoretti South constituency is the only constituency in Kenya that has a comprehensive school feeding program. Simple model, hub and spoke. We built a central kitchen in a school called Mokarara Primary School, and out of that kitchen, today, we are serving 17,000 lunches every day. Lunch is prepared in the morning. By around 11, we are already distributing the lunch to all our public schools, and now we are onboarding indigent private schools. Now, where technology comes in is that every child who enrolls on the Dagoretti South Tap to Eat school feeding program is given an armband that they wear. The technology in there is done in partnership with Safaricom and Cisco, and so this child carries their meal card as a wearable technology. So they walk up to the teacher, they scan their armband, and you can be told how much credit you have on your lunch. What is even more amazing is that with that program, the moment we launched, we could see the impact immediately. Attendance rose exponentially, truancy reduced exponentially. More importantly, we started collecting more data about the whole idea of school feeding when we realized that the first days, children were coming with plates. But as we went on, we saw children coming with bowls that they can like containers that they could cover, meaning that their children who are coming from homes where that is the only meal they will get that day. So out of the 600 grams of food that they get, they can do either 100 or 150 grams, pack everything else to go and share with their siblings at home. And this has brought a massive revolution in the Dagoretti South constituency, maybe one of the reasons why I got re-elected. And now we are even pushing this program to our neighbors. We are now giving some little food to the Dagoretti North constituency, Kabete constituencies as they prepare their kitchens. But the point I wanted to make here is how government, an NGO in the name of Food for Education, Cisco and Safaricom can come up to bring a very simple model that changes everything in a constituency. Thank you very much, Philip.
Thank you so much, KJ. And now you understand the logic, because at some point, technology looks very abstract. But when it's put to this use, you see the real world impact, because sometimes that's the connectivity we don't have. And so with that lunch conversation, let me end by saying this, tying the Dalbach presentation on this. From what I'm understanding as a summary of this panel, one is data is important, but also protecting it and ensuring that it can be used for development. Second thing is technology infrastructure, which includes broadband connectivity and how you ensure that it connects at macro, but also at micro level. Skilling. I want to add reskilling and upskilling, because the reason why Mahesh has been able to do this, I know his skills and reskills. That's why he has that mindset. Fourth one is energy. Power, we should not lose that discussion, because when I hear all of you, whether it's cloud, whether it's Dell, whether it's Cisco, there's energy involved. So can we also see how to invest in that? And maybe in the next Connected, hope we'll have somebody from the energy sector. The fifth one, of course, is the governance of things, which is governance of technology, whether it's regulation, doing it a little bit differently, but also internally these organizations, how they regulate, but also how they govern themselves to be able to invest heavy, but also to ensure that that infrastructure can also provide real use cases, not at that cost, but at a cost that has developmental value. Sixth one is finance. Muesh has mentioned it, but let me add sustainable finance. Because then it's just not one-off, it seems to be something that you can power all through. The seventh one is partnerships. all I hear here is collaboration, partnership in whatever model. So those, for me, are the 7 things I'm picking as potentially what we can add to your country roadmap in terms of how you create a sustainable digital ecosystem. And with that, let me hand it over back to Jeff. Thank you to my panelists.
Wow.
As much as possible, and Victoria.
Another round of applause for them as they have their seats. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Sorry about that. Of course, as you exit the stage, some tokens of appreciation for the wonderful participation and insights you've given us on collaboration and how to move forward as well.
Certainly, Jeff, and the conversations on this stage, food for thought, which is a perfect segue into lunch. So we're going to give you a few more details, housekeeping, because after this, we will not be convening together again until tomorrow. So we have a few breakout sessions just after lunch. Right now it is 2:45-ish. Lunch has been allocated 1 hour. And after that, we'll be going to our breakout sessions. So really quickly on what that breakdown will look like. Plenary right here will be the county forum. And they'll be looking at the role of counties in fostering digital economic growth in Jumuika, which is just outside. That will be breakout session number 2. That will be data protection, shaping a common regional data policy. What do we have after that?
After that, back here, the third plenary session and breakout session, Smart Nations, Smart Cities, and Smart Industries. That happens in this particular room. Then down the corridor, back at Jumuika Hall, the breakout session there is on cyber security, building the region's cyber resilience. Each of those discussions, in the interest of time, will be 1 hour each. So for those panelists and for those interested in those respective conversations, time will be of the essence to be in those particular rooms as well.
That's right. So hopefully the day is over by 5:30. After that, there's some after summit activities. So we'll have the cocktail by Airtel at 5:30. Following that will be dinner by Cisco. That will be at 7:30 p.m. And then there'll be a fireside chat by Dell at 9 p.m. If you have enough energy, please save it for then. But enjoy lunch, network, and we'll be back here for the breakout sessions. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a good afternoon.
Makes sense, not Ganga.
kidogo au mara moja kwa urahisi, na ukilipa haraka unaongezwa kikomo chako cha mkopo. Kila unapopata mkopo, 5% ya pesa zitawekwa kwenye akiba kwa akaunti yako, kukuwezesha kuwa na pesa zitakazokufaa wakati wowote. Kujisajili kwa Hustler Fund, piga *254#, kubali masharti ili uweze kupata mikopo na kuweka akiba kwa mtandao wowote. Hustler Fund, jiinue, jiendeleze.
My name is Anthony Muyoro, partner at Deloitte. I'm looking forward to joining and participating in the 12th edition of the Connected Summit. Looking forward to forging new networks, new alliances, and really just to enrich the conversation on how we can digitally enable our country and how we can drive digital transformation and how we can work together to drive our economy forward. Looking forward and see you at the Connected Summit.
Register now. www.connected.go.ke. The 12th edition Connected Summit 2023 Digital Economy. Endless opportunities shaping our future. Connected Summit 2023 Digital Economy. Endless opportunities shaping our future.
My name is Chavez Muri. I'm the CEO at Maran Telecom Networks. We are a customer-centric technology company providing fit-for-purpose, turnkey smart technology solutions. As a technology partner of choice, we work with our customers through their solution development journey, from design stage, building POC prototype, deploying minimum viable products, all the way to live product deployment. As a result, our customers have not only deployed fiber products, but also streamlined business operations, achieving digital transformation with high impact on net revenues.
I am John Tano, BS ICT and Digital Economy. I invite you to Connected Summit 2023. This is a very important event you cannot afford to miss. This is where we come to discuss issues of ICT and digital economy and how we can transform our economy and our country to be a leader in this space. Thank you.
Register.
Smart grids and devices that manage power precisely. Waste is used.